We're going to talk about bench resting your rifle. About 55 years ago, when I really got going shooting, doing a lot of shooting, developing my own loads. At that point in time, I right off the bat discovered that there was a better way to bench rest your rifle. And I've explained this before in another video, but we're going to tie this into, not only just bench resting your rifle, but for practice at longer range. And then we're going to progress from there to shooting in maybe various different situations where I'm going to explain some of these things so that you can understand what I do, how I do things, and so forth. Right now, I'm going to show you a technique that I've shown before. When I bench rest my rifle, I don't put my hand back here. I don't put my hand back here because that doesn't give you solid control of the rifle. Everything's always constantly moving. As soon as you get into the rifle like this, everything's moving because it's picking up your heartbeat. You got to understand you're looking through a scope with magnification. Now, the way that I found that produces tighter groups, always produces tighter groups, once you get it fully understood and mastered, I rest my hand right up here, just like this. You get into the rifle, the reticle on target. You've obviously got to adjust things around. You noticed I use a big heavy bag here. This bag is about 1 foot long. On top of that, I put a towel down in here to tighten the rifle into that bag around the forend. This takes this fore and aft movement out of the forend of the rifle. Of course, we've got it rested on a rabbit ear bag back here. You just simply slide this to and fro. You can slide this to and fro a little bit to get adjusted where you want to. And the other thing is, if you'll notice on my bench, I've got, 2x6s raising things up right here just a little bit. And the reason being, I don't want to be down low. I want to be up almost as high as I possibly can so that my body is more erect, you see. And when a gun recoils, if your body's more erect, everything swings a little bit better. And anyway, that's what I do. It was probably wise for you to get down behind your rifle just like I'm doing. Dry fire your rifle, cock your rifle, and practice getting things adjusted in, getting things lined up. And anyway, once you realize by actually seeing, and you're going to be able to see by having this hand here, it takes some of that movement out of the reticle on your target. That should very definitely explain to you that is going to make you shoot better by doing this. Because if you've got this movement, it might be just constant movement like this, and you've still got a faint amount of movement even this way, but it's so much less than if you sit here like this. This rifle has a muzzle brake. This rifle will come virtually straight back. Anyway, this is a 300 Winchester Magnum, and built around a Borden custom action, built built for us with Randy's Custom Rifles on it. This is our hunting model long range rifle, all set up for the purpose. Once you've mastered this technique that I'm showing you by getting, and I'm repeatedly getting down here, once you've mastered this and you can consistently shoot to your satisfaction at 100 yards, I suggest for you to move to 200 yards. Do some shooting. Move to 300 yards, 400 yards, and so forth. And if you've got an accurate rifle, a good accurate rifle that's consistent, and you've got loads that are consistent, and I'm always talking about consistency here because you can't have top accuracy without consistency. So, you know, everything that I do is built around consistency. Consistency for top accuracy, using a chronograph and developing loads with very tight velocity spreads, so that as we get downrange, that velocity spread isn't magnified in such a way that now you don't have accuracy downrange. Because if you've got a big broad velocity spread, as you shoot downrange, you're not going to have the accuracy. And I would suggest as you're shooting on downrange that maybe you shoot either at a paper target if you've got the ability on a range to do so, or at a gong. And if you can't keep your shots, you know, shooting from the bench in a good tight area, you know, let's say that your rifle, this rifle here, will shoot half-inch groups at 100 yards. As you go on down, you should expect, say at 300 yards, it ought to shoot 1.5 inches. 400 yards, it ought to shoot a 2-inch group, and so on and so forth. So a half-inch group, theoretically, should give you a rifle that would shoot 5-inch groups at 1,000. Now it may not shoot that tight. It might shoot, say, 6 or 7-inch group at 1,000. But I think that's adequate. I think that is adequate for shooting, you know, at long range under target conditions and so forth. And once you've basically kind of perfected shooting from a bench, we have a lot of interest in wanting to shoot at longer ranges. And you've got to practice. You need to practice from a bench. And I see people doing some practicing with all sorts of bipods on their rifles. Bipods sitting on a hard bench like this. That doesn't work. The minute the firing pin falls in the gun, it's disturbed everything on that bipod, and you're not going to shoot ever off of a bipod the way you can shoot off of this system right here. So, you know, you're wasting your time shooting off of a hard bench with these bipods, because it picks up a vibration. There's a vibration when that firing pin drops. Everything moves, the gun goes off. That movement on those legs, I'm not just talking theory, I'm talking fact. I've tried all these things. Many, many years ago. I started using like a Harris bipod over 50-some years ago, shooting at longer range, shooting rock chucks. You know, I shot a lot of rock chucks in my earlier life at long range, and I'm talking out to about 600 yards with, you know, varmint type calibers and so forth. And it's one thing getting a rest somewhere, you know, as far as the terrain dictates and so forth. And a lot of times I would actually even take that bipod off. I would have actual sandbags with me, and I could always shoot better, always, off of those sandbag situations. If we were set someplace and there was a rocky ridge and we had a lot of rock chucks in the country, we could stay there for hours, and occasionally when a rock chuck would show up, you see, that's where some of my early shooting started, was doing those sorts of things. It's a very, very, very good practice. But I got away from some of that because a lot of people were catching on to this, and they just about annihilated all of our rock chucks, so we had nothing left to shoot. So I think it's much better that you do your practice, on, you know, the bench, and advance yourself from there to shooting positions. You know, start off then from there, sitting down, kneeling, standing up, getting prone. Use a day pack. Use a day pack or something like that. Prop up your day pack to shoot maybe prone in the mountain somewhere where there's logs or whatever them might happen to be. Lay your day pack on that log, or maybe, you know, if you've got something, maybe you can take off your cap to basically give you something to kind of cushion that rifle. But do your practicing under real hunting conditions, so that when you encounter these types of hunting conditions in the field, that you're going to be able to get the job done. And you know, I've repeatedly said that I think a pretty long poke is 500-600 yards, and it is a pretty long poke. And in most instances, under good conditions, that all works out well, you know, to those distances. But when we start stretching past 600 yards, we're really magnifying things, and it doesn't magnify in the way that you might happen to think. The conditions could be way, way different where you are, and you know, do your shooting on an average day. We just started talking here just a few minutes ago. There was no air movement. Then all of a sudden, there's air movement. Now it got a little bit of breeze. I can look at the trees stand right here, and the limbs on the trees are starting to move a little bit. Well, the conditions have already deteriorated, you see. When I do my precision shooting, I pick days where everything's still, and it's probably going to start doing what it's doing right now, right around 10 o'clock in the morning. Here we are, we're only at about 8:45 or so here in the morning, and we're already getting a condition that is going to create some problems for you downrange. And we've got a lot of technology. I'm not all for a lot of this technology, as I think that a lot of you know by now, because I think that it's stretched the limit way, way too far. You want a wind meter? Get yourself one. Whatever's available, whatever you like to do. But without practicing, as I've detailed to you, you know, you're going to go afield and you're going to be disappointed. You can't just simply pick up a rifle and go afield and, you know, say, well, I'm going to shoot an elk at 700 or 800 yards. Well, yeah, you've got a rifle. This rifle is a very accurate rifle. It's got a Leopold custom dial system, and we can dial our yardages and whatnot. But all these things change. All these things change with conditions. They change with temperatures. They change with barometric pressure. I got ready this fall and I was kind of pressed tight to go hunting. And I shot my rifle to double check it. And the humidity was way, 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 way down. I mean, it was, you know, the air was so thick. The air was so thick that you could almost slice it with a knife that morning. Well, at 600 yards, I'd happened to be, that's why I wanted to shoot and see what was happening at 600 yards. I was shooting a foot low. I was shooting a foot low from my known adjustments, figured out on a correct day. And I ended up grabbing 5 different rifles. And I was anywhere from a foot to 15 inches low with all those rifles that particular day. So, you know, you need to pay attention to conditions. There's a lot lot to do. And that is just exactly why, in many, many situations, this is a pretty average day here, today. And I would consider today to be a fairly good day if you were hunting under these conditions and so forth. We don't have any heavy mono-wind. We've got a faint little bit of a breeze here, and we can probably handle that. But anything that gets to be more than what that is something that is not working in favor of a correctly placed shot, and it's certainly not in favor as far as our prized game animals go. And I believe firmly that what I'm explaining to you, this practice, and of course I've been shooting a lifetime. I had a situation happen this fall. I was with somebody. There were several people with me, and we were hunting, and it was just about 5 minutes after legal shooting light, and we were out on flat type prairie. Well, my range finding binoculars have done a tremendous job over the years that I've had them, and I've got some of the first Bushnell range finding 1042 binoculars that were made, and those binoculars have a very good range finding system in them, developed by Laser Technologies. They worked out a deal that that Bushnell could use that in their binocular system. It's worked tremendously well. I couldn't get a reading. I didn't know what the range was. We thought it was maybe 6. It was probably 800 or 900 yards. 800 or 900 yards. Well, in that sort of situation, you don't know what it is. You don't know what the range is. It happened to be that it was flat prairie, and the light was coming up over the horizon. There wasn't any sun, but it was just starting to get a little bit brighter, and there was a glare over that flat prairie. And you got to understand, we got about 25 head elk just standing way out there about 900 yards out across this flat prairie, and shooting just over the top of that sagebrush covered prairie. There was a glare, and I tried a half a dozen times and never could get a reading. And since then, various days, I've stepped out under every condition here where our home is in the mountains, where we're not on that flat thing, and no matter where I punch for a range, that automatically reads it perfectly every time. So not everything works just right. Well, what do you do in that kind of situation when nothing's working? You pass up the shot. It's too far anyway. 800-900 yards is way too far to be shooting at elk. And we've discovered that there's people shooting at them as far as a mile. That's all they're doing is shooting at them. There's no way that they're gonna ever connect, and there's no way really to get into any kind of a position, that's ideal to shoot at some of these longer ranges. And this is why, all you can do is do the practice and do the best that you can do. And when you find out that your ability and your rifle's ability and your loads, and under the conditions that you can't reliably say, if you can't reliably say that you can't shoot past 600 yards, then don't shoot past 600 yards. If that's your limit, as far as you are able to reliably shoot at a target, don't shoot at game past that distance. You see an elk at 750 yards, don't let your eagle run away with you and shoot, because you're probably going to have a problem. And the game animals being picked up all over the country, not here just in Wyoming, but all over the country, that have been shot and wounded and never recovered by somebody that's going to do that sort of thing. So I think that it's a fairly straightforward and simple situation, but as conditions dictate, that limits a lot what you can do. It might limit it a lot more than what you figured out your capability is on a given perfect day. Say you can reliably do some of these things at 600 yards. And maybe on that poor day, maybe you shouldn't be shooting past 400. Well, limit yourself. Limit yourself. There's other opportunities. And, you know, just because you bought an elk license or a deer license, that doesn't guarantee you an elk or a deer. And there's other days. There's other days that you'll have opportunities. And I've, you know, many times, I've passed situations where I knew that things just weren't right because I knew what the variables were. And we hunt in some very tough country, timber. And if you shoot an elk or a deer at some of these extreme ranges, and it takes you an hour to get there, and it wasn't hit exactly just right, you don't know whether you're ever going to see that animal. An hour for you to get there, that animal could have traveled 4 times as far as you could if it was able to still gain its footing and have its feet under it. And I have seen elk that have been hit poorly and know that they've traveled 5 and 6 times further than I did trying to catch up with them. Or I've known people that I've been with. I've seen situations. So that my background, seeing these situations and understanding what the variables are and what's going on, you know, if you've got some open country and you got a 500 or 600 yard shot, that's one thing because you can see the animal. You can see the animal, hopefully. That you can get a second or a third shot, you know, if you foul things up. But in a lot of hunting situations, you don't ever have that kind of opportunity because the terrain and everything doesn't dictate that. It's just simply different. And then almost always, it's not going to be in your favor, and it's not particularly in the game's favor because now the game's wounded, but you can't see it, and you never catch up with it. Well, this is a rotten thing, and this is why I'm talking about these things here, you know, today, to try and, you know, bring a better sense of being to everyone, to understand that we need to, you know, be careful what we're doing. Be careful what we're doing. Be ethical. And always practice good sportsmanship.